Hey, it's Zane. Welcome back. Happy Easter to you. It's actually Good Friday today, so I hope you have a great long weekend wherever you may be. Thanks for tuning in again today. And in this video, I want to talk about the path to a $5 million Bitcoin retirement. And I want to explain why this is important. And if you're able to achieve this, if you're able to get this right, I truly believe that you'll never have to worry about money again. And not only that, you're actually going to pave the way for multi-generational wealth in your family. And I'm not sure if that's important to you. It's certainly important to me, but I think any kind of a legacy that we can leave in this world to kids, descendants, loved ones, whatever that might be, I think that that's a good thing, particularly in this rapidly changing world and economic landscape that we're in. So I want to get to these models that I've kind of sketched out for you here in a moment. But the first thing to realize before we get to that is, superannuation and 401ks, there's a big issue with them. We know that they're in the spotlight. They're being targeted right now. We've had cyber attacks on some big industry super funds in Australia over the last few weeks. We know that they're looking to impose unrealized capital gains on superannuation funds that are valued at $3 million or more, which kind of sounds like a lot, but really in today's context, there's going to be a lot of superannuation funds in the next 5 to 10 years that are going to fall into that category. It's not really a lot of money anymore. And so we have to understand that, when we look at superannuation, when we look at retirement funds, we really need to pay attention to how they're performing and whether or not they're going to be able to deliver a comfortable retirement for us. And when you start to look at the current performance of those funds, then you compare it to something like Bitcoin, which is a finite, scarce monetary technology that is compounding at a growth rate that is about 8 to 9 times the average industry super fund, you really need to start thinking about where you're allocating your long-term savings. That's my firm belief. And this is why there are people out there right now like Peter Dunworth, who's a financial planner from Sydney, who is now a very prolific spokesperson for Bitcoin and works with a lot of high net worth individuals, helping them to onboard a portion of their wealth into Bitcoin. He's on a lot of big podcasts. You can look him up yourself, Peter Dunworth. And I was listening to an interview a couple of days ago that he did with Brandon from Green Candle, the Green Candle podcast. Brandon's an American guy, a young guy. He was interviewing Peter, and they were talking about retirement and how much Bitcoin is required to get there. And, Peter was saying that in his opinion, the correct allocation to Bitcoin, if you have, more than 10 years to retirement, the correct allocation to Bitcoin is actually 100%. And he really built the case for that. And I'm a firm believer that he's 100% right. And the reason for that is because Bitcoin is outperforming everything. And we have to understand where we are on the adoption curve. We are very, very, very early, and we have now all of these massive pools of capital making their way into Bitcoin. And so we have a window of opportunity now to really stake our claim personally for the future. And this is why, in Australia, there are many people now who are looking very closely at their retirement accounts. They're looking very closely at their superannuation. And they're realizing that a 7% compound annual growth rate from an industry super fund is simply not going to be enough. And I'm about to share with you some comparisons with Bitcoin's average compound growth rate as compared to the average performance of an Australian superannuation fund over the past decade. And you're going to see just how significant the difference is and what it can mean to your financial future. And so for those that aren't paying attention, who are just kind of blindly going to work week to week, year to year, and not paying any attention to their retirement account because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, it's something that's on the horizon, those people, I believe, are going to realize when they get close to retirement age, they're going to have a significant financial wake-up call, because they're simply not going to have enough to be able to sustain them in retirement, certainly comfortably. And so Bitcoin is a solution. And there's a reason why smart minds are saying the correct allocation to Bitcoin in a retirement account for those that are able to set it up correctly is 100%. And you're about to see why, because I'm going to share some facts and figures with you that are actually quite mind-blowing when you think about it. Now, before I get into this, I want to draw your attention to a tool which you can Google yourself. It's called a reverse Kager calculator. Reverse Kager, C-A-G-R, calculator. And this is a great little tool that you can plug some numbers in for yourself. I'm going to share with you 3 scenarios here. And I use that tool in order to come up with these numbers for you. But I'd encourage you to, spend a little bit of time playing with this calculator and plugging in some scenarios, some numbers for yourself, and it'll just help you to plot a financial plan for your retirement. And, based on where you are now, I'm 52, I plan to be done and dusted by the time I'm 60. And so everything that I'm doing now is built around that time horizon, that next 8 years. Now, for you, it might be 10 years, maybe it's 15. For my kids, it's more like 30. And so it's up to you to decide what your time horizon is. But the 3 scenarios I want to work towards here are 10, 15, and 20-year scenario in order to get to that 5 million plus in assets in terms of Bitcoin with no debt. And if you're able to get there, because of the ongoing compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin, even if it drops to half of what it currently is, you're never going to have to work again, because you just won't be able to spend quickly enough in order to ever run out of money, because the balance of your retirement account is still going to be benefiting from that compound annual growth rate that will continue to grow. So it's really important to keep this in mind. And I believe that we're going to have a lot of optionality in the next 5 to 10 years. There are going to be so many different financial products built on top of Bitcoin. And you and I are going to be able to go to any bank in the world. And if we choose, we're going to be able to post our Bitcoin as collateral in order to generate, access currency for lending. But even if we're paying 8 to 10% for that benefit, if Bitcoin's still doing 25 to 30%, as Michael Saylor predicts it's going to be doing, it's going to sort of scale back and level off to that. He actually predicts a 29% compound annual growth rate over the next 20 years. So, even if it does pull back to that level, because you've got, this 5 million in capital, if you start plugging those numbers into a calculator and you're spending, say, 250,000 a year, you'll quickly see that you will never, ever run out of money. So let's get to some facts and figures, and let's take a look at this. And here I want to explain to you the difference, and I want to draw some comparisons where you're allocating capital over a 10, 15, and 20-year period, the same amount of capital to Bitcoin versus leaving it in a traditional superannuation fund. And this is based on current performance over the past decade. Okay, and then, like I said, from here, go to this reverse Kager calculator, plug in some numbers for yourself to start crafting out your own retirement plan. But the golden number here, for me, is 5 million. okay, 5 million, because I know that with 5 million, money will never be a problem. I'll never run out. Plus, I'll be able to pass on multi-generational wealth to my kids and beyond. So if that sounds like a goal for you, then really pay attention to these numbers. Now, scenario number one is retiring with 5 million in 10 years. So we're going to start with a 10-year time horizon now. To get to 5 million in 10 years, essentially it means acquiring one Bitcoin right now. And one Bitcoin we know is hovering around that 80 to 85,000 US dollar mark. That's kind of the range that it's in, around about 130 Australian dollars. But let's just work on US dollars, 85,000 USD. If you were able to allocate and acquire $85,000 worth of Bitcoin, which essentially would enable you to become a whole Bitcoiner today, at a compound annual growth rate of 50%, which is actually about 5% less than Bitcoin has done over the past decade, but let's just be conservative and let's call it 50%. Some believe it's going to be a lot higher than that. Some believe it's going to be a little less than that. But over the next 10 years, many believe that 50% CAGR, given where we are on the adoption curve, given the amount of capital that is coming into this space, that is a reasonable expectation. Let me know your thoughts. I believe that it is. So if you were to acquire one whole Bitcoin today, 85,000 at a 50% CAGR, in 10 years' time, you would have $5 million. $5 million in 10 years' time. If you did nothing else, you allocated no more capital to Bitcoin other than getting your hands on enough capital to acquire one whole Bitcoin today, for as long as it's hovering around this 80 to 85,000 US dollar mark. So in 10 years, you got $5 million. Scenario number two is if you have 15 years to go, and all you would need, if you've got 15 years and the goal is again 5 million, all you would need is 0.15 of a Bitcoin, which is around about 15,000 US. I've just rounded the figures up for illustration. It's a little bit less than that, but let's call it 15,000 US dollars. If you allocated 15,000 today at 50% compound annual growth rate, if it was to stay that way for 15 years, you'd have $5 million plus in 15 years' time. And if you were to move out to 20 years, so if you've got 20 years until you want to retire, all you would need is about $1,500 today at a compound annual growth rate of 50%. $1,500 today, in 20 years' time, at the same level of performance that Bitcoin has been doing for the past decade, you would be sitting at that $5 million mark. And this is why for young people who have that 20-year time horizon, they don't need to allocate as much to Bitcoin, and a lot of young people are struggling just to keep up with the cost of living and paying their rents and paying for their car payments and whatever it might be. And they already know that the prospect of them ever being able to have their, save enough for a home is pretty much out of reach, and so they're forgetting about that. But what if they could allocate at least $1,500 to Bitcoin and put it into cold storage and forget about it for the next 20 years? I'm not sure what you think about that, but for me, that's a pretty straightforward a bet or scenario that any young person should be considering. Of course, if they put $1,500 in, they could then allocate a portion of their salary or wages, even if it was $50 a week or a fortnight, whatever it might be, to just build on that base. But $1,500 today at 50% compound annual growth rate in 20 years' time is going to be worth $5 million. This is the secret of compound annual growth. Now, I want to draw these comparisons with industry super funds, and we know that they've been performing at 7% in Australia over the past decade. So we take that same 10-year time horizon, $85,000. So you've got the choice. You can buy a whole Bitcoin for $85,000, or you can leave that $85,000 in your retirement account, Superannuation fund, doing 7%. In 10 years, that industry super fund will have only generated 170,000. So 5 million in Bitcoin, 170,000 in super. In 15 years, the $15,000 scenario, you can buy 0.15 of a Bitcoin. In 15 years, it'll be worth over 5 million, but in superannuation, it'll be worth 41,000. Crazy stuff. $1,500 investment in Bitcoin, 20 years, 5 million. In 20 years, that $1,500 in super will be worth $6,000. And so herein lies the problem. Those that aren't paying attention, they're going to end up with a significant financial wake-up call in 10, 15, 20 years from now. And so really my message to you is to start paying attention, utilize these tools, start plugging in some numbers, start paying attention to your superannuation, look at its performance, look at the fees that are being extracted from that performance, and really have a look at, where you're at now, when it is that you want to retire. Do you have the ability to set up a self-managed super fund? Do it correctly. There are professionals and experts that I know. There's one in Sydney, there's one in Melbourne that are fantastic at doing everything right, setting up your strategy, statement of advice, the right trust structure, setting up your CMA, your cash management account, the right brokerage in order to onboard into Bitcoin. And then, of course, you're able to also put it into cold storage, even if it is in your SMSF. And so all of these things are really worth considering now. And, it was really interesting to me to listen to Peter Dunworth yesterday saying that, the correct allocation to Bitcoin, if you have more than 10 years to retirement, is actually 100%, because he really believes that the trajectory of Bitcoin from where we are now is only going to accelerate. So keep that in mind. You've got a choice. If you've got a retirement account, if you've got a long-term savings account, whatever you want to call it, you really need to be thinking very seriously about whether you're allocating it to an underperforming fund that is generating that average 7%, or whether you want to put it into a high-powered performance vehicle that is engineered to go up and to the right forever, called Bitcoin. Because that's what Bitcoin is. It is a finite monetary instrument that is mathematically engineered to continue to accelerate in value because it is truly scarce. And so this is the path to a $5 million retirement. And what's really interesting is that $5 million, the ensuing 5 years, if you've got 5 million and it continues at 50% compound annual growth rate, the 5 years ensuing after you reach that 5 million at 50% CAGR, it's going to be sitting at around about $32 million. And this is why, even if you were to sell down a bit of your Bitcoin per year to fund your lifestyle, because of the compound growth of the balance of your capital holdings, of your Bitcoin holdings, is going to continue to perform, you'll never ever run out of money. So I hope you get that. I hope you've got something to work with from this video. I hope there's some insight for you to consider, for you to play with some numbers, use that reverse CAGR calculator, and really consider what it is that you need to fund a comfortable retirement to ensure that you never ever have to worry about money ever again. I believe 5 million is a great number to focus on. I believe that everybody can achieve it. It really just depends on their time horizon. It depends on their ability to stay patient, stay the course, keep furthering their knowledge in this Bitcoin space, proper self-custody, and really just staying with it and not allowing the market to wear you out or to shake you out. That's really the name of the game. So I'm going to leave it there today. A lot to think about. $5 million, that's a target for me. Let me know what you think. Do you think 5 million is out of reach? Do you think it's achievable? Are you allocating with that in mind? Do you have any other goal in mind? I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Please leave your comments. And please remember to like the video, to share the video with anybody who you think may be interested. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe so that you're alerted when the newest videos drop, and I'd love to have you a part of my community. Thank you for listening today. Have a great Easter. I'll probably tune in tomorrow, but until then, have a great day. This is Zane signing out. Bye for now.